I'm Christina Wyckoff. I'm the Section 106 coordinator and historical archaeologist here at the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office, and I would like to welcome you all to our July Lunch and Learn presentation. Today, I'm so happy to introduce Kaisa Barthuli. Kaisa is the program manager for the National Park Service's Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program, and she will be discussing how to advocate for Route 66 resources. Thank you so much, Kaisa. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to this presentation on how you can advocate for Route 66 resources in Oklahoma. And I hope and presume you're all settled in with your world famous Oklahoma onion burger for your lunch while we chat. And many thanks to Christina and Linda and others within Oklahoma SHPO for inviting me to participate today. It's truly an honor. So I have a lot to share today, and I hope that there's a little something for everyone because I know we have a really diverse audience. So please know too that if I'm going too quickly, as Christina mentioned, the presentation is available as a handout, as is a list of links, and please feel free to contact me with any follow-up questions. So let's start with a very quick overview of the national history of Route 66. For those who may not be aware, it was part of the very first federal highway system. And after being in service for 59 years, became one of the very few U.S. highways to be decommissioned in 1985, in part because you can see its very strategic location across the country. And so because of that strategic nature, it was replaced by 5 interstates. It passes through 8 states. It's 2,400 miles long as the crow flies, but the number of miles is actually double that when you consider all of the miles of realignments through time, all of which we consider to be significant. Route 66 was a popular commercial, military, migration, and tourist route in the day, and a really important thing that sets it apart from other highways of its time was that it had a very special relationship with the arts through song, literature, film, and television, which truly elevated it to iconic status as a symbol of 20th century American culture and transportation history. So when it was decommissioned in 1985, advocacy groups and associations formed in each state to promote preservation and ongoing attention for Route 66. And so in 1990, a federal act was passed to have the National Park Service conduct a special resources study to determine if the road had national significance, and if so, how could and should the federal government be involved with stewarding the historic road. And so in a nutshell, the study found that Route 66 is of national historical significance as a symbol of our transportation history. The gas stations, cafes, and motels that define the corridor are important, tangible links to this history, and the most representative and significant properties should be preserved. So after a long process that included public meetings and research to determine how the federal government could be involved, it was decided that a program of financial and technical assistance should be put in place. And so another act was passed in 1999 to create the program that I have the privilege of managing today, the Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program. And I always include this slide in my presentations because it's really important in that the legislation says that the Secretary of Interior shall assist in the preservation of Route 66 in a manner that is consistent with the idiosyncratic nature of the road. And I love this because I'm fairly certain it's the only piece of legislation that contains the word idiosyncratic. And you'll see why this is important soon if you don't already know why. So the National Park Service program sits under the umbrella of the National Historic Trail System, although it's really important to note that the road has not been designated a National Historic Trail at this time. Rather, we are a program that works with partners to provide recognition, technical assistance, and grant funding to preserve the special places and stories of the route. And who are those partners? Well, basically, it's really anyone who wants to work with us, because we do not own or administer any part of the road. And so our work completely relies on working with the private property owners, American Indian nations, state agencies, and others who do own the pieces of road and are interested in its preservation. So I'll get back to more on our program in a moment, but for now, let's talk about Oklahoma and why it's unique and important among the states. Oklahoma plays a pivotal role in so many aspects of the entire national road, and I'll touch on some of those aspects today. First, it's important to acknowledge the American Indian nations who were here before Route 66, and to remember that Route 66 is an overlay of a much larger story. What is known as National Route 66 today crosses the lands of more than 25 American Indian nations. And as this relates to Oklahoma, nearly half of those nations currently are in Oklahoma. And so tribal history is fundamentally an important part of Oklahoma Route 66 history. As for the creation of the road itself, it was an Oklahoman, Cyrus Avery, who is known far and wide as the father of Route 66. He was a Tulsa businessman who totally understood the economic impact that highways could have. And so as an Oklahoma State Highway Commissioner and member of the joint board responsible for creating the first federal highway system, he was very influential. And to make a very long story short, he was responsible for Route 66 coming through his hometown, coincidentally, right past his business. And he was also part of the numbering of Route 66, which, thanks to its alliterative nature, is part of why Route 66 is so famous today. He also helped found the U.S. Highway 66 Association in 1927, which was hugely important in early promotional efforts of the road. And it was headquartered in Oklahoma for much of its life until disbanding in 1976 with the coming of the interstates. So part of that early promotion was a transcontinental foot race along Route 66 in 1928, which brought runners from all over the world, as well as worldwide attention to Route 66. The race started in Los Angeles and followed the entire Route 66 to Chicago, with the final leg to New York. There were 275 runners from all over the world who started the race, and by its end, only 55 crossed the finish line. And guess what? The winner was an Oklahoman named Andy Payne of Cherokee descent from Foyle, Oklahoma. And then there's Phillip 66. Legend has it that the company had a meeting in Tulsa to decide on a name for their new company. And while driving to the meeting on Route 66, a Phillips executive said that the car was like going 60 miles per hour on their new gas. And the driver, though, looked at the speedometer and said, 60 nothing, we're doing 66. And so the legend has it that that's how Phillip 66 was born. Another important Oklahoman was the humorist, actor, and author Will Rogers, who grew up in Claremore, Oklahoma, as a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. And after his tragic death in 1935, the highway was memorialized in his honor. You have another famous author from Oklahoma, too, and that is your very own Michael Wallis. I like to refer to him as a father of the revitalization of Route 66 for his incredible book on Route 66, his role in shaping the Disney Pixar film Cars, and for all his advocacy through the years. And there's just no question that Route 66 would be where it is today without Michael. Oops, went too far there. And so I could go on why Oklahoma's history along Route 66 is so important. I will stop here, but conclude that you have today you have some of the longest and most pristine stretches of Route 66 anywhere along its national length. And this is an incredible community and economic development opportunity for the state of Oklahoma. And speaking of community and economic development, let's talk for a moment about the value of Route 66 on its many levels and why it's worth advocating for. Route 66, by its very nature, has always been a commercial corridor and a vacation route. And as a heritage route, there's so much critical potential for celebrating community identity while promoting economic development, while also having fun, right? So in 2012, we partnered with the World Monuments Fund and Rutgers University to conduct a very first ever study of the economic impacts of historic preservation and tourism on Route 66. And while this document is now more than 10 years old, its primary finding is still absolutely true. And that is that Route 66 is a powerful tool for community and economic development, especially in small towns. Vast untapped opportunities remain to capitalize on Route 66 history and tourism to improve lives and economies in these communities. And so while the numbers from that time are now a bit outdated, they're over 10 years old, the crux of this can be understood by understanding heritage tourism in general. It's widely known that heritage tourism creates jobs and business opportunities, helps protect historic resources, and often improves the quality of life for local residents. Positive impacts include economic gains, rejuvenation of culture, infrastructure development, and improved social services. Heritage travelers spend more time and money at their destinations than any other type of traveler. So it's all good. So before we look at how to advocate for Route 66, let's spend a quick moment to understand what exactly is a Route 66 resource. And I'll provide just a few examples. In terms of the physical resources, perhaps you can say that it all really begins with the road, the pavement itself, which is the fundamental spine around which everything else revolves. So this includes the roadbed, bridges, culverts, highway markers, billboards, and other features of the road that can seem so invisible, but without them, there's no Route 66. So while much of the road today has been paved over or widened, there is still some that remains that is first generation and original to the historic period. And Oklahoma is an incredible example of having a lot of this original first generation pavement remaining, but they are highly endangered, and advocacy for these resources is really important. For example, unfortunately, this bridge in the upper left in Bristow is no longer with us, but the 9-foot highway in Miami, Oklahoma is a major tourist attraction and is about to receive some important rehabilitation work. The spaces in between buildings and communities are also just as important as anything else, and that is cultural landscapes and view sheds. Here in Oklahoma, that tends to be farmland and ranch land, which is often threatened by development. And then there's the architectural infrastructure of the road, of course, the built environment, such as gas stations and garages, which fortunately are easy to adapt to new uses and businesses. Both of the businesses here are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which I'll talk about in a moment. Cafes and diners are also easily adaptable to new businesses, although sadly, Pop Hicks in Clinton, Oklahoma is no longer with us. But the Rock Cafe on the lower right in Stroud is still going strong, and its story was a major inspiration for the movie Cars. Cabin courts, motels, and hotels are also critical infrastructure that help tell the story of the road. These, unfortunately, are one of the more threatened resources because their floor plans are harder to adapt to new uses. A demolition permit has just been issued for the Glancy in Clinton, Oklahoma, for example, and the Cotton Bowl is an example of a site that's still fully intact, but being used as a domestic residence, which is an adaptive use of its own. But while we're on the slide, let's talk about signs for a moment, which are another important Route 66 resource that's highly endangered. Neon is folk art, and each one is unique. And finding neon vendors willing to travel the distances to repair these signs is a big issue, as is maintaining neon over time and in extreme weather. Another huge risk factor for signs is people buying them and removing them from the landscape, which is a terrible loss for the experience and character of Route 66, except as a very last resort. Trading posts and tourist attractions are another kind of Route 66 resource. And of course, the activities that fill these historic places are critically important resources. That is the businesses and the businesses, museums, etc., that are the heartbeat of Route 66. They are everything and critical to community well-being and economic vitality of the road. Businesses that have been in operation since the historic era are particularly special. And just as small businesses and sites are important resources, so are the people, the stories, and culture of the road. They are important to understanding our history and who we are today. And I mean onion burgers, right? But very seriously, it is these aspects of culture that vary across the road and which are so unique within Oklahoma, that are the tangible link, to the tangible link to telling these stories. And so all of this is so important to preserve. So where can you begin to advocate for Route 66 within your community or state? So this is a hit list of suggestions. Of course, it's by no means exhaustive, but first and foremost is going back to that legislative brilliance of preserving the idiosyncratic nature of the road. This is about what makes your property, your community, your state unique and special relative to the rest of the road, and preserve, commemorate, and advocate for that. The national story is being told elsewhere, trust me, and what you have is special and unique. I think of a small town in Moriarty in New Mexico, for example, whose economy during the historic era revolved around growing pinto beans. So that is the story to tell. Pinto beans, in a cute little burlap bag with a Route 66 shield on it. Those are the things, along with the stories, to share with travelers. Second, refer to the Rutgers study I shared earlier to understand more about how Route 66 can promote community identity and economic development. Understanding these principles is very critical to your advocacy for them. Third is collaborate with others. Don't do it alone. Talk and get advice from other business owners, communities, both in and outside your state. Refer and support other businesses and communities down the road, and they will do the same for you. There are financial and technical resources out there that I'll share in a moment. Just know that there's a broad base of support. Fourth is promote your business or community through any and all tourism opportunities. Refer to your local tourism office, state tourism office, Route 66 Association, and others. Fifth is policy. Be in contact with your local officials, state legislators, transportation officials, and others to tell them how important Route 66 is to you and how important it is to the state for community and economic benefits. You can stay up to date on things happening in Oklahoma by following the Oklahoma Route 66 Association and also this wonderful online news outlet edited by former journalist Ron Warnick called Route 66 News. And a sixth way to advocate is to have fun on Route 66. Go experience it in your state and beyond. Support events and small business owners. So have fun. Of course, there are many other ways to advocate, but these are, in my opinion, some top ways. So there are many resources to help you advocate, and here is a short list of strategies and organizations here to help you. First of all, let's talk about strategies. Know what you've got. Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, has long been a huge advocate of Route 66 and one of the earliest SHPOs to recognize the historical importance of Route 66. They were among the first to inventory the historic resources of Route 66, and they've continued to maintain and update this database over the years. This is an example of a 2002 report, so you can see what it looks like. And each property that has been identified has a photograph and a site form filled out for it. So since 2002, SHPO has uploaded all Route 66 survey information into a searchable online database, and a digital copy of the original paper survey reports are available on their site too. My office has also maintained and uploaded this data into a GIS database, so it's searchable through a geospatial map. So why is this inventory data so important? It's important because it allows you to understand your property or your community relative to others along the road. And by contacting SHPO or my office directly, we can help you understand the historical significance of your particular property or community. It's everything, knowing what you have. So with this information, you can also find out if your property is already listed on the National Register or may be eligible for listing. And listing on the National Register is not only an honor and allows you to hang one of those cool brass plaques on your building that talks about how special it is, but listing also may make your income-producing historic property eligible for significant tax credits for any historic preservation work you do on the property. And listing can increase your odds of federal and other funding assistance where it's available. This slide here shows an estimate of how many Route 66 properties along Route 66 in Oklahoma are listed on the National Register. Again, it's an estimate. Other strategies for preserving and advocating for Route 66 can start at the local level by just telling the stories of your building or community. This can be done in so many ways through local museum exhibits, outdoor waysides. And there's so much you can do at individual businesses. Here's an example of the Laguna Burger operated by the Laguna tribe in New Mexico. And underneath the canopy there, I don't know if you can see it well, but they have all kinds of interpretive information about the tribe's history along Route 66. And otherwise, a business like a restaurant can tell their stories through anything like the back of a menu. That alone is a simple and wonderful strategy. At the local community level, developing corridor management plans is an outstanding strategy. Using the inventory I mentioned earlier, these plans can identify all the historic properties within your community, as well as other Route 66 assets, and develop a plan for revitalizing and promoting these resources. The city of Tulsa has an excellent example of this. In their case, the plan was paid for through bond funds, I believe. You can look at their plan as an example of what's possible. And the city of Albuquerque also has an excellent example of a Route 66 master plan. Part of these plans can include the concept of an overlay district. Overlay districts establish zoning regulations and incentives to authentically revitalize Route 66 and provide guidelines and special exceptions to property owners for things like neon signs, historic buildings, and new development. The city of Tulsa, as an example, has an overlay district established through an ordinance that creates a zoning district for the enhancement, development, and revitalization of Route 66. And again, Albuquerque also has an overlay district specifically for Route 66 neon signs. Facade improvement programs are other strategies that some communities along Route 66 have used, including the city of Flagstaff and the city of Tulsa. These can be paid for through larger taxes and things like that. Tulsa has an improvement program specifically to support neon signs, which you can find on their website. And to date, at least 50 old and new neon signs have come to life with support from this program, relighting that corridor through Tulsa in a really wonderful way. Community-supported monuments, public art, and street improvements are other ways to raise awareness about and advocate for Route 66. As are city landmark programs and real estate initiatives. The first example on this slide is in the town of Normal, Illinois, where the owner advocated to the city to landmark this National Register listed gas station. She went ahead and then renovated it with funding assistance from the city and our program. And the city has since purchased the building and intends to operate it in perpetuity as a visitor center, meanwhile allowing the owner to live in the upstairs portion for as long as she wants and needs to. In the lower right-hand corner is an example where the city of Albuquerque purchased this property and held onto it for years looking for a sensitive developer. It took nearly a decade to find that developer, but now the motel has been renovated into a vibrant mixed-use site that has lodging, restaurant pods, a brew pub, small shops, and it's just generally a beloved traveler and community social spot now. The Main Street program is a wonderful resource for communities. They are focused on revitalization and economic development of historic downtowns. Here you can see communities that have Main Street designation and offices in Oklahoma. And not only can you look into becoming one if you aren't already, but you can, Main Street has a variety of resources available that you can use within your community, even if you aren't designated a Main Street community. Hosting events is another local strategy that brings community members and travelers together. They're fun, they bring money to the community. And here I'm just highlighting Tulsa again, who has a grant program to encourage events. Their grants will reimburse an eligible event for up to 50% of the costs, up to $5,000, which is a wonderful way to incentivize events to happen. So because preserving roadways and bridges is so important, I thought I'd also bring up Section 106 consulting party status, and things like programmatic agreements, just to make you aware of them and how you can be involved with matters relating to roadway preservation and bridge preservation. So just a moment about programmatic agreements. Just be aware that these are agreements that tend to be between the Department of Transportation and State Historic Preservation Office and others that guide the sensitive treatment and maintenance of roadways and bridges that are eligible for the National Register. Illinois, pictured here, has an outstanding example of a programmatic agreement. In this case, this bridge was rebuilt to replicate the historic appearance of the bridge exactly, and great care was taken to do so. The programmatic agreement continues to guide the treatment of Route 66 in Illinois today. And again, while it's an agreement between the DOT and SHPO, these often come to be as a result of mitigation for the removal or replacement of a historic road or bridge by the Department of Transportation. So when a property is eligible or listed on the National Register, the public has the right to participate in what are called Section 106 negotiations as a consulting party. And therefore, the public can have an influence on the project outcome, including how the bridge may be rehabilitated or any possible mitigation or programmatic agreements. So that's a lot to understand if you're not familiar with Section 106, but this is just an introduction in that case, and SHPO and I are happy to talk more about that with you. So moving from strategies to support, at the local level, just some supporters are, of course, your municipal leadership. If your community is a certified local government, they will have a preservation commission who can provide support, as well as Main Street offices, chambers of commerce, tourism offices, among others. At the state level, I cannot emphasize enough the good work and resources of the Oklahoma Route 66 Association. Join them to stay up to date on activities, events, resources, and issues in Oklahoma. Reese Martin, who I believe is in attendance today, is president of this association. And the association helps coordinate statewide economic development, enhancement, improvement, preservation, and recognition of Route 66 in Oklahoma. They have a trip guide, event calendar, fundraising for projects and signage, advocacy, networking, a business member directory, and historical information, among more, on their website. Reese is involved in all manners of the road. He's a member of Tulsa's Route 66 Commission. He's on the board of the National Route 66 Road Ahead Partnership, which I'll talk about in a moment, as well as state initiatives and so much more. He and the association are an incredible resource for you here in Oklahoma. You are also very fortunate to have Preservation Oklahoma working on your behalf. Preservation Oklahoma is your statewide nonprofit dedicated to all preservation matters in Oklahoma, not just Route 66, but they administer an annual most endangered list and have listed many Route 66 resources through the years, which brings important advocacy and attention to them. They have an online downloadable community preservation toolkit and otherwise support many other forms of preservation advocacy. They are a great resource for you. Moving to the state government level, again, you are so fortunate to have the ongoing support of your SHPO. SHPO manages the historic property inventory, the National Register and tax credit programs, certified local government program, annual statewide preservation conference, and are generally available to support you with all things preservation, advice, and guidance. They're incredible friends to Route 66. This brown bag lunch being a case in point. I hope you're enjoying your burgers. As mentioned previously, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation is your go-to for any concerns you have about preserving original historic roadbed and bridges in your state. know that you can participate in Section 106 consultation. You can also visit their website. They have incredible information and resources about Route 66 in Oklahoma on their website, and there you can stay aware of road and bridge projects in the state. Your State Office of Tourism is an excellent friend of Route 66. They offer trip planning, a passport program, a calendar of events, a newsletter, map, brochure, and otherwise can advise on tourism and opportunities to promote your resources. If you have a contaminated site, such as a gas station tank with the old tank still in the ground, please note that there may be support for you to remove them and clean up the site within the Brownfield program of the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. As for national level support, please know that there is a nonprofit dedicated to revitalizing Route 66 through partnerships focused on promotion, preservation, education, and economic development. Again, Reese of your Route 66 Association is on the board of this organization, so can fill you in on the details, as can I. Periodically, this organization is able to offer grants. Some of the most recent ones have supported women-owned and Black-owned businesses. The National Trust is an organization you must know about if you don't already. Like your statewide preservation organization, the National Trust is your national or nationwide preservation organization. The Trust has taken a very special interest in Route 66 and has listed Route 66 motels 1 year, Route 66 in its entirety another year, the Threet Station in Luther, Oklahoma another year, and most recently the Wallapai Tribe's historic fueling station on Route 66 on their America's 11 Most Endangered list, which can bring critical attention to these sites and to the road for preservation support. They've also designated Route 66 as one of their national treasures, which means they're invested in and supporting Route 66 in relative perpetuity. Among their most recent initiatives is a large-scale effort to shine light on places connected to the route's hidden legacies, those of American Indian nations, Latine, African Americans, Asian Americans, women, immigrants, veterans, and others who are a vital part of the road's multi-layered history. They provide a host of funding opportunities and advocacy, including grants that back historic small restaurants, preservation grants, and others. Another national initiative to make you aware is a collaboration that my office facilitates. It's called Research Route 66. And because my office is primarily focused on historic preservation, we rely heavily on partners who, in this case, can help with managing and promoting the archival record of Route 66. Research Route 66 is a collaboration of 10 libraries, museums, and archival institutions along the road who take the lead in their states in collecting, promoting, and networking Route 66 research and collections. And here in Oklahoma, your contacts are the Oklahoma Historical Society in Oklahoma City and Oklahoma State University in Tulsa. So now moving on to national federal support, let's talk about the program I manage through the National Park Service. So in addition to providing free technical support on all matters related to historic preservation, we also offer a cost share grant program. And to date, we have funded over 169 projects, 55 of them in Oklahoma. And with the cost share match requirement, this equals a total investment of $6.5 million to date. We are a seed grant program and offer small grants between $5,000 and $30,000. We do require a 1-to-1 cost share match. And technically anyone is qualified to apply, including private property owners, which is a very rare thing within the federal government, but is so important in the case of Route 66 to be able to support small business. So we are able to do that. And here are just a few examples of projects we've funded mostly here in Oklahoma. For example, we love to fund preservation planning projects, such as the planning project for the Threet Station in Luther, Oklahoma. We in the National Trust also provided funding for the restoration phase of this project, which is very near completion. Another example of historic preservation is the recent restoration and relighting of the Highway Cafe sign in Bonita, Oklahoma. This site also benefited from a backing small restaurants grant from the National Trust. And this is just a quick look at a few of the other sites that we've supported, among others here in Oklahoma. We also support research projects. For example, this one will evaluate the existing National Register nomination for the Hydro Bridgeport section of Route 66 to upgrade it from its status from local to national significance. And another example of an educational project is a grant that went to the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association to develop a American Indians and Route 66 travel guide. We've also supported wayside projects, such as this one for the city of Flagstaff. So we're almost done here. I just want you to be aware of a couple of other national level programs that aren't necessarily focused on Route 66, but which can support Route 66 projects. And that includes the National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities for art and humanity-related projects. The Small Business Administration can offer help and advice on funding and other programs for small business, and they also have district offices in your state to consult with. And lastly, before I conclude, I just want to make you aware of two really important opportunities. One is that federal legislation has been passed to form a federal Route 66 Centennial Commission to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Route 66, which is coming up in 2026. So the commission has now been formed, and Oklahoma is represented on the commission by two members, Tim Gatz, the director of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, and your very own Michael Wallis. So you are very well represented. The commission will study and recommend activities to celebrate the centennial, which will be carried out by a federal entity to be determined, including potential ceremonies, celebrations, the production of media and other materials, commemorative items, etc. So keep an eye out for this. Oklahoma has also passed legislation to create a state-level Route 66 Centennial Commission. The Centennial has been formed and basically recognizes the opportunity to celebrate the history of Route 66 in Oklahoma through commemorative, educational, and community events. And so tune in to the Oklahoma Historical Society website for meeting dates and other updates and information on your state level commission. And very lastly, I want to make you aware that federal legislation has been introduced in the House to permanently designate Route 66 as a National Park Service administered National Historic Trail. The program I manage was intended to be short term, and so this legislation would provide a permanent National Park Service presence. It has yet to go through committee and still needs to be introduced in the Senate, but it is on its way. So that does it. And I'm guessing you've finished your lunch, and I'd like to open up the floor to all of you to share any other ideas or resources that I may have missed. Or, of course, just to ask any questions that you may have.
So, Kaisa, the first question that we received was about the Ribbon Road, I believe, the sidewalk highway. And an individual asked a question because they were concerned about the rehabilitation project. Is your office involved in that project, and can you provide any additional information?
Yes, certainly. So, yes, our office is involved with that project in that a few years ago, we provided funding to the county to develop a preservation plan for the Ribbon Road. And so that preservation plan has been completed and is available for public review. And however, while the plan is in place, what the actual work to be done, the actual work plan is still to be developed. And that work plan will go through that process that I mentioned, a Section 106 consultation process. So the general public has the opportunity to provide input on whatever the work plan turns out to be. And the work plan could differ from the preservation plan. So it's important to stay abreast of what's going on. And if you have any concerns, to become a stakeholder and provide your input during the Section 106 consultation process. And you can do that by contacting the Department of Transportation to register your name as a stakeholder so that you will receive invitations to the public meetings. And they will also continue to post information about that project on their website. So our involvement, again, was in preparing a preservation plan. And now we are a consulting party in the Section 106 process.
The other question we have is there a list of the cost share grants awarded to date? And
go ahead.
Would that be available? Could we direct folks to that location?
Yes, so we have a partial list available online right now. We recently migrated our website that had every grant listed. We migrated it to a new format, and only some were able to be transferred at that time. So on our website, you can go under the grant section and see the more recent grants that have been awarded. And if you're interested in prior grants that have been awarded, please contact my office, and I'm happy to provide those.
And I think I have that link to the partial list, which I've placed in response to that question. Let's see. The next question I see is, which of these opportunities would you recommend for LGBTQ nonprofits on Northwest 39th Street, established in the early 80s, looking for recognition by the Park Service or others in order to receive funding for building preservation, renovation, landscaping, etc.?
Please contact my office, and we can talk. We can talk about this. My office is working slowly but steadily to work with partners to have all the stories of the road told by those who live, work, and experience the road. And so we would love to talk with you about potential project ideas and resources. And the National Trust for Historic Preservation, their big current initiative, is also looking for opportunities to help support and promote some of the undertold stories of Route 66. And so please contact my office and we can talk some more.
And then the last question I see says, basically, the poverty rate along Route 66, is it higher than the surrounding areas? And is there sort of an explanation for that, given then the economic health of the highway is important for many people to do better, right? Because of that. So, okay, let me just read this. Somewhere I remember reading that the poverty rate along Route 66 is normally much higher than surrounding areas. Is that correct? And if so, then the economic health of the highway is so important for many people to do better.
Wonderful comment. And
Yes.
Where you read that was likely the Rutgers report that I mentioned in the presentation, because it was through the demographic research for that study that indeed it was learned that there is a higher poverty rate along the road. And there are a number of factors related to that. And I'd like to point you to the study to look at that. And so because of those facts, those demographic facts, related to the departure of, commerce, from Route 66 with the coming of the interstate and many other reasons, shifting of economies and all kinds of things. The Rutgers report pointed out that there is so much opportunity to take advantage of heritage tourism, historic preservation and heritage tourism for revitalization of these communities. And it's there. The opportunity is there. The pandemic has been a hardship, to be sure, but the centennial provides a tremendous opportunity to raise awareness among your local leadership, your statewide leadership, to be supporting initiatives to preserve rather than tear down these important resources, and look for creative ways of adaptively reusing them, if not using them for their original purpose. There was another point I wanted to make. Yes, and so that the Rutgers report was very clear that there is critical opportunity. There's untapped opportunity on the road to utilize Route 66 as a powerful economic and community development tool.
Thank you so much, Kaisa. I believe that's all the questions we have now. If anybody has additional questions, you can certainly send those to us. Oh, just one more. Got it in right on the line. Has the National Route 66 Commission, formed on December 28th, 2022, had a meeting yet, or is there one scheduled or a schedule available?
Yes, they released a press release saying that they have met, but there hasn't been a lot of other information provided yet about what's been discussed. So I encourage you to contact either Tim Gatz or perhaps Michael Wallis or another member of the commission for more information and updates. It's my understanding that they don't yet have a website up where you can go to learn more about what's going on with the commission. It's all in process.
Well, thank you so much, Kaisa, for your presentation. Thank you for everyone who attended. Please check out the recording of this presentation later and register for our future events at our website at okhistory.org/SHPO/events. Thank you.